Okay, today I want to talk a little bit about Hillsong. Do you know who Hillsong is? You may or may not. Let me just cue you in into what it might be. You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail, and there I find you in the mystery. In oceans deep, my faith will stand. Okay, that was just one little verse of one little song done by Hillsong, but that is their most famous song. It's called Where Feet May Fall. And it's a beautiful song that has to do with the oceans, relating faith to ocean. So here, every church, hey Heather, every church I've seen here, every evangelical church sings this relentlessly. I sang it. It's the worship team I was on at our last church. And at every other evangelical church I've been part of, including my old Quiverful church, we were constantly singing Hillsong worship songs. Some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard. And the bad thing is it's coming out of what is clearly, I don't want to call it a C word. I don't want to say C-U-L-T. Let's just say that Hillsong has revealed itself to be a high demand religious organization. I know there's somebody that loves to throw that particular C word around, but it's not applicable to most Christian churches, even the most toxic of them. Okay, if you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tidkemeyer. I used to write for Pathos, a column called No Longer Quivering that dealt with the Quiverful movement, the evangelicals like Hillsong. And Hillsong is somewhat quiverful. I'll explain that in a minute. If you could hit like, subscribe, ring the bell notifications, I'd appreciate it. Don't bully anybody. Don't go from here and go to Hillsong, or even with our dear Catherine. Hey, Shaylin. Hey, Grace. So I have to admit, I am prompted to talk about this because my understanding, some things I saw yesterday, dear Catherine was talking about Hillsong and how it has screwed up Justin Bieber and his wife's relationship. Now, his wife, I believe she's a Baldwin. She's the daughter of one of the Baldwin brothers. Well, if that person says a lot of things, rarely some of it is true. Java man, that is the truth of the matter. But they're not a C word, but they are problematic, and we need to talk about that. For the life of me, I could never figure out how they could come up with some of the most beautiful worship songs I've ever heard, including, saying a little verse of Where Feet May Fall. And for the life of me, I can't understand how beauty comes from such dysfunction, but it does. And that seems to be almost like a joke of the universe on all of us, because Hillsong was started by a man named Brian Houston. I don't know how he pronounces it. And it, I would say, is neo-Pentecostalism. There are some Pentecostal beliefs in there that are mixed with some Assemblies of God, which are really kind of almost new agey, some of the stuff there. Hey, nobody. And they're known for their worship music. And their worship music, like I said, it is absolutely fabulous. One of the crazy things about Hillsong is that they have just gone on all over the place, and they have opened, I can't even stand the Houston and what happened. I can't stand it either. They're kind of like a spider with tentacles going out everywhere. They've opened up Hillsong in New York City. They had a Hillsong in all sorts of different places. In Central America, I believe there was one for a while. There's all sorts of things. But they started in 1977. I kind of blame them, because one of the things that they did was they started this whole evangelical, do as you please, make it up as you go along thing that is very popular now, the non-denominational thing, where they have no denominational anything. And that's how Justin Bieber got involved with them, because they were in New York, they were in Los Angeles. They had Carl Lentz, who was who was their pastor, who was all hip and trendy with his trendy jeans and trendy haircut and all that. And I think what they were doing appealed to Justin Bieber because of many things. I think as a child of a divorce, without a whole stable family situation, that you're going to be looking for that. That is one way, hey, Ginger, that these churches like Hillsong pull you in, is they meet your need for family. Now, dear Catherine has been saying that her church was affiliated with Hillsong, and they may well have been. A lot of churches are slightly affiliated. My original Quiverful church was affiliated with Hillsong. Hell, I've gone to Hillsong worship teaching workshops. And so a lot of churches are kind of loosely affiliated with them. But it is funny to watch her because she's flapping around now trying to say, oh, it's all Hillsong. And so that was very interesting and also kind of funny because so many churches were loosely affiliated with Hillsong. What is interesting to me about Hillsong and some of their satellite churches like Hillsong Kiev, Hillsong, they tried to open one in Tel Aviv. I don't know if they ever finished it. They expanded into Canada and Mexico. I think one of the things that they did that surprised me the most is they bought Golders Green Hippodrome in London. And they said they were going to start holding Sunday services there. I don't know if they ever did, but they're just like expanding outward. Even as they're having the scandal with like Carl Lentz, he was found to be having affairs. They kicked him out. They kicked out Brian Houston. He didn't report on the sexual abuse of a child by his father. His father was also thrown out. So there's a lot of scandals there. And you have to wonder about mega churches. I'm going to say this. There's been some phony baloney going on with the money. And they've been trying to go after Hillsong for a long time for taxes. And they've been less than see-through with how they do they do their money. And with these mega churches, I always say, follow the money. Look at the money. Look who has got a $60 million plane. My understanding is Hillsong also has an expensive plane that they bring their worship team around the world on. That's part of the church. And I understand if you got to be somewhere, if you got to be in Cleveland on Tuesday and you can't get a flight there, it might be better to have a plane, but it does seem a bit extreme. There is often something phony with mega churches and money. There's always, I'm going to say that, there's almost always something. I say 90% of the time. When you hide so much sin, it shows who you truly aren't. Grace Peter, the other thing that I'm going to lay at the feet of Hillsong is what I call performative worship. I was talking with somebody about performative worship yesterday because they were talking about praying in tongues. And many places believe in praying in tongues. I used to believe in praying in tongues, sort of. It seemed like such a weird thing. They were pushing on all of us and insisting. And I went to a workshop one time where they were trying to teach us to pray in tongues. This was at Brownsville Assemblies of God in Pensacola. And they weren't going to let you out of the room until you managed to just pray in tongues. And so my friend and I, we basically they said, we got to sing it if you can't say it. Sung a pile of nonsense syllables and got out of there. I was raised in the whole speaking in. But it was pushed at times. Disagree with that. Grace, that was a problem. It was pushed in so many places. So where was I even going from this? Uh, okay, the money thing. So the speaking in tongues was something kind of like the money. You look at where these churches are and which ones embrace the weirder things and where they're going with their money and what they do, whether they're buying, like I said, $60 million jets or not, or the pastor is wearing $1,000 sneakers. That's usually a pretty good tip off. The church itself is pretty corrupt and that the money is all over the place. I know Australia has been trying to get a look at the money and like, let me read you this one. In August 2022, Hillsong was sued by an Australian whistleblower in federal court there, alleging that the megachurch had moved millions of dollars overseas to avoid the charity's regulator, the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. The whistleblower alleged that Hillsong made, quote, large cash gifts, unquote, to Houston and his family using tax-free money. That's the kind of nonsense that goes around. One of the things that is very crazy about Hillsong is they really are a global corporate brand. They have the whole thing going with corporate branding, and that is one reason their music is everywhere. Their music is their global corporate brand, and it just happens to have been marketed relentlessly. They have used all kinds of marketing schemes. It's a perfect storm of marketing schemes, timing, and market. There's a large market for those kind of worship songs. And like I said, I've loved a lot of the music that come out of there. I don't like what they're doing in a lot of ways, but that. Now, dear Catherine was saying that Hillary and Justin Bieber had marital problems, and Hillary had been talking about it and saying that how the theology of Hillsong harmed them. Watch, Hillsong will be the next lawsuit against KJ. It may be the next lawsuit against KJ because she was making claims about that and saying, well, they believe this and they believe that. And I know they do because they were filling with an old church. That's not true at all. I mean, they they hold some theology that is problematic. They are what I call soft complementarians. What do I mean by that? They're not hardcore standing up there screaming from the rooftops that if the wife doesn't submit to the husband, that it's demonic. They don't do that, but they are soft complementarians. Their whole gender affirmation, what they do with gender roles, is straight out of Fundy Town, but it is wrapped, cocooned in soft pink chiffon and velvet, and it doesn't seem so bad. And that's what soft complementarianism is. So for her to be making those claims about Hillsong, some of the claims she's made are pretty bad. There are, sure enough, like I said, the money thing is one of the reasons to maybe dislike Hillsong. They've gone through all kinds of people lately because of the whole scandals with Brian Houston's father. I can't remember if it's Houston or Houston, how they pronounce it. His father having molested children. And they had a college at one point. They went around the world teaching worship. Bobby Houston was teaching Hillsong Sisterhood and doing all kinds of women's outreach and ministry. And the church's beliefs are straight up evangelical and Pentecostal. But like I said, they do that in a very soft way. There's soft power and there's hard power. I was thinking about that last night because I was watching House of the Dragon, and we've seen Allison Hightower use soft power in her trying to get her sons named the heirs from her late husband. She used soft power with him. his daughter uses hard power. Soft power is what women traditionally do when you try to influence your husband to do things or not do things. And it's not really showing your hand, it's doing things kind of secretively. And that is a long time what Hillsong has done. A lot of their non-central doctrines of faith are diverse. But some of the things that they've taken stands on are just pretty horrible. Their stance on creationism and intelligent design, they want to see creationism taught in the schools only. They also have a ton of prosperity teachings. They've done better at that lately, but they still have it there. What do I mean by prosperity teachings? The prosperity gospel teaches you that if you actually will pray right, tithe right, submit right, do everything like you're supposed to do, that the Lord will bless you financially, that you will have finances falling into your pocket without doing a thing because God is blessing you. My own husband occasionally will fall into that. He still carries that from his worship of Joel Osteen. If we end up with a parking space right up front, he says, God's favor, God's favor. And that just irks me. Do I think God can give you favor? Heck yes. Do I think it's always going to happen? Heck no. In fact, I have to laugh a little bit about that because before we bought our car, I was actually praying on our way up there going, Lord, let it be an automatic and let it be in a color I love, preferably blue. Well, we drove up and the only model they had in the car we wanted was a deep blue and it was an automatic. And I was like, yes, thank you. But I don't go around all the time expecting that. If you have the prosperity gospel in your heart, you are going to run around and think that God is going to favor you in everything. And you're going to be looking for that everywhere you go. Everything is going to look like it. We call it blab and grab. Name it and claim it. Yep, exactly. That is exactly it's a good way to name it. Name it. It's blab and grab. Blab and grab. Name it, claim it. We used to talk about name it, claim it at my old church too. Hillsong does that. They have the whole name it, claim it thing going on too. Like I said, I can't really criticize the music at all. I don't have any problem with them having made money and having done a whole lot of the music, the worship music. Because like I said, some really great worship music has come out of it, along with some squishy theology, I think. But I think you really have to use some discretion, dare I say discretion. One of the things that I don't like about Hillsong that I've seen in a lot of evangelical churches, including my former one, that I saw amply illustrated the other day last week with House of the Dragon, is the whole prophecy thing. Personal prophecy is fine. I'm a big believer in that. When God reveals something to you and you seize onto it, yes, that was for me. That's the thing I needed to hear right in that moment. My problem with prophecy is when people start saying there are prophets and that God is giving them a word from everybody, for a word for you or for somebody else. My old pastor, he did teach one thing that was healthy about it. He said that if somebody tried to give you prophecy that was negative or anything like that, that it was not true prophecy, that true prophecy was meant for edifying and building up. I think that's where the line is. Are people blessed and built up? If they are, then yeah, it probably is. The title of the head of LDS is prophet. I know that. And I hate to hear that. I hate it when people call themselves prophets. And I've seen a number of them. We have one I'm going to call Mr. Yoder, which is not his name, but it's close, that would always come to our church and give prophecy. And while it wasn't negative, it was straight out of cold readings. It was straight out of the Barnum statements. It was the kind of trickery you see people engage in when they are doing a cold reading on a psychic level. Self-declaration as being a prophet, in my opinion, is very dangerous territory, just territory. That's entering into blasphemy. Grace Peters, it is close to blasphemy. And I've seen people seize upon the craziest things. The other day, I saw somebody that was saying that God had given them prophecy for everyone. And the prophecy was, you were not to kiss anybody until you got married. And because you were going to save your lips for your spouse, because your lips were your husband's property. That is the biggest bunch of baloney I've ever heard. Kissing has been around since the beginning of time. I actually researched it for my book because I was talking about this. This is the kind of personal prophecy that can do major damage as far as I'm concerned. And to say that you were some kind of used up, pre-licked candy bar if you kissed anybody before is utterly ridiculous. But I've heard this claimed. I've heard them say this thing. Of course, for the prosperity gospel, you can call the people prophets. I can sign off on that one. Yep. So, Grace, that's fine. That happens. So these people that are giving all this prophecy, and I've seen and heard some pretty crazy ones. My husband was told one time he would be a blocker in the Lord, a football player, like a blocker football player. And we still to this day don't know what Yoder was saying. He told me one time that I had 3 something sitting on a shelf above 3 other things. So anybody, you could pretty much apply that to anybody. That's a Barnum statement. That's something to try and engage with you, to get you to say, yes, and then embrace it so they can get more information. And at the time I did, I said, well, I have a shelf that I have 3 orchid plants on. Immediately below, I have an aquarium with 3 hermit crabs in it. And he kind of riffed off on that and said, God says about you that you will always be somebody that will be able to walk in the deepest of God's glories, like a crab scuttling along the bottom of the ocean. Lips, my husband's property. Yep. So, cold readings, Java Man, it is cold readings. It is Barnum's statement. A lot of them use that. I have not experienced Hillsong prophecy, so I cannot say with 100% certainty that that is what they do. But so many evangelical churches use Barnum statements and cold readings. The prophecy folks do. And that is what they're coming up with. That's why I say I dislike people giving prophecy for me. Some of the most ridiculous ones I've heard was one, and I've talked about this before because we went to, at the time, the church was called Vineyard in Wilmington, North Carolina. The pastor was Tom House. Was it Tom Hauserman? Tom H. Okay. We went there for a deliverance ministry weekend, and the prophecies given were ridiculous. Both of us were told the other one was having an affair. I don't know about that. I don't see how either one of us had time to have an affair. We both had full lives. Jim was told he would like Star Wars and fishing. He doesn't like Star Wars or fishing. He hates it when I watch any sci-fi. In Carolyn Jessup's book, the preacher would predict the weather. She checked the internet, and the predictions were exactly the same as the weather service. Of course. They do that to seem extra spiritual. And like I'm saying, performative Christianity, performative worship. We're seeing a lot of that in many evangelical churches. I used to believe in speaking in tongues. I used to believe in holy laughter, in people that were doing all these things, that were singing, that were raising their hands in the air. Now, hands in the air, I can still get down with, because if you're deeply touched or in worship, you'll do that. I've experienced that. But some of these other things are just performative Christianity. They're performative. They're doing it to seem more spiritual. It's kind of a, what do we call that? I'm having brain farts. I'm having brain farts because the asthma was crazy earlier. We went out shopping. When you're trying virtue signaling, it's a type of virtue signaling. And I think that prophecy for a lot of these people falls under that because they're not actually prophesying and they're not actually prophesying or telling you anything of any value. Of course, you're having an affair with each other on top of men. Absolutely. But they only kept me 2.5 hours there because I was not cooperative. They told me, I said, because we have to deliver you and we have to deliver him. I was like, no thanks. I don't feel any need for deliverance ministry. But it was ridiculous things. I still have his list of what they told us then. And like I said, this church was also another one that was connected loosely to Hillsong and so many other ones. They were involved with Randy Clark up in, was it Pittsburgh or was it Harrisburg? Harrisburg, PA. That was another big church up there that is a little on the Looney Tunes side and does all these same things. So, like I said, I think most prophecy that someone wants to give to you is performative and is a manipulation tool, and they're using cold readings to pull that off. Of course, he only kept me 2 hours there because I was uncooperative. It sounds like a timeshare sales pitch of a man. It may have been like that. They kept my husband 9 hours. 9 hours. And when he came out, he was all like sighing. And I was like, what did they do to you? It's only recently he's been able to talk to me about what they did to him in there. Basically, he finally figured out that we're never going to let him out of there unless he confessed the things they wanted him to confess and prayed the way they wanted him to pray and get out of there. It's kind of like myself and the Speaking in Tongues workshop at Brownsville Assemblies of God. Once I discovered they were not going to let me out of there until I spoke in tongues, and they said sing in tongues because that's easier, and I started just rattling off syllables that are no more spiritual than the words, do you want fries with that? I mean, they were so insistent. And it's like so many places when you go through fire tunnels or somebody prays for you and they push you down. They push you down hard because you're not being slain in the spirit. I got to admit, I miss fire tunnels. That was kind of fun. Holy Laughter was kind of fun. Some of those things they're doing were kind of fun, even if they were performative. And I guess if they make you feel better about yourself in some way, there is a value, even though I still think it's kind of performative. Hillsong used to also do conferences. At one point, they had a channel on Trinity Broadcasting. They no longer have that anymore. There was a documentary about them, Hillsong Let Hope Arise, that played in movie theaters throughout the United States in 2016. And one of the other things that just blows my mind about Hillsong that I don't like, that a lot of churches do this, is Hillsong had a significant amount of political influence wherever they were. And when you have churches that are influencing government, it is never a good thing because they're taking away your rights. They're determined to do things like overturn abortion rules. They want to teach creationism in schools. There's just a lot of things they want to throw out there and influence politics. And to me, once they start impacting politics, they should lose their, 501c designation as a charitable organization. Our old church used to put Intercessors for America voting guides on every chair in the church until my husband finally challenged that and said, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that. If this is a 501c charity, you're not supposed to be doing that. And they moved them to the back table where if you wanted one, you got one, but we're no longer trying to tell you who to vote for. Churches are notorious for that, for trying to influence. And I think that they just need to just drop that. That's just not good at all. And Hillsong has had some really high-profile politicians in Australia, especially. like the Prime Minister, John Howard, and most of his cabinet. Um, there's been a number of ones that they have influenced. And their influence over politicians is one of the things that got criticized about the most, that and their finances, their ties to controversial organizations, what they say about the LGBTQ community, because they are very against that and they say a lot of stuff. The back table is probably still illegal. It probably is, but you know something? I could accept the back table. Put whatever kind of weirdo thing you bought back there with the other brochures and let people make the choice whether or not they're going to pick up the voting guide or not. I kind of miss getting the Intercessors for America newsletters I used to get because they always had interesting books. I would call them up to order books frequently because their books were, they had a couple that were good. There was one on Native Americans and faith that I absolutely loved. I got from them. But it's so funny because there's so many organizations that I'm talking about that are all intertwined like this, like some kind of weird ivy. Not even a spider, but like weird ivy is all I'm going to say because it's just they're all interconnected and they all pretty much are doing the same thing. The finances, they used government grants. They got $40 million Australian in 2004 and 50 million Australian dollars in 2010. The money that they received was to help with the Aboriginal communities, not anything else. And it was spent on so many other things, on staff, salaries, and other things. And at one point, they said they were going to do microloans to Indigenous Australians, but they only granted 6 loans, totaling just over almost $3,000. So they were getting all this money from the Australian government, and they were spending it on anything but helping the Aboriginal people, Aborigines. At least they're not being paid to stop, not to grow corn or not to grow tobacco. My husband has family members. I don't know if they're still getting paid not to grow tobacco, but they were getting government subsidies not to grow tobacco. I thought that was kind of funny. It's like, hey, can we buy some land here and set up a farm and get paid not to grow tobacco too? Sorry, my asthma is making me drink like a fool today. And I mean, take a look at this. Frank Houston, the father of Hillsong Church founder Brian Houston, he'd been a pastor in New Zealand and Australia, and it came and at Assemblies of God churches, and it came out that he had been sexually abusing boys all those years. And that's how this church was founded, from people who were doing that stuff. It says that Frank offered the victim $10,000 Australian as compensation, and that the church finally did an investigation, and he confessed to the crime. I think that was right around 1999 from my reading, 2000. And Frank resigned from the church in 2000. And his church was merged into Hillsong Church as a result. Assemblies of God. And they found more abuse he'd done in New Zealand as well. They still haven't gone to trial on that. One of the ways the church has really been criticized is for their stance on homosexuality. They consider it sinful. They do the love the sinner, hate the sin thing, which is kind of insulting if you think about it. And they're opposed to all of that. They're opposed to anybody being trans. I just got here. Is Hillsong the church that Chris Pratt got crap for belonging to? I don't know. I don't know. Let me take a real quick look. Oh yeah, here it is. He was okay. Chris Pratt clarifies his relationship with the controversial Hillsong church. I never went to Hillsong. I've never actually been to Hillsong. I don't know anybody from Hillsong. Okay, it's because when he was speaking at MTV Movie Awards, he gave a list of rules and he started talking about God. And I like this. Religion, he says, has been, quote, oppressive as F, unquote. Yeah, it says he was reported to having attended, but he says he's never been. He attended Zoe Church, but not exclusively. Zoe isn't free from, I guess, I don't know if they pronounce that Zoe like I would normally, that spelling, or Zoe. It's not free of controversy. It was founded by Chad Veach, who participated in a short film that equated same-sex attraction with sexual brokenness. You know, that is Hillsong stance too, sexual brokenness. I remember there was some big to-do about his church being homophobic. So many other of these churches are homophobic. That seems to be the standard setting. You know, that was one of the things I really appreciated about the Methodist Church. They didn't throw rocks over that. And I don't think they should be. I don't think they should be anyway. Now, are all those religious people against homosexuality also in full compliance with all Jewish dietary laws? Java Man, I like to pick on them when they start with me about what they believe. Start saying, well, do you wear clothing that's made of cotton mixed with something else? Maybe cotton and synthetics. Do you eat shellfish? So start talking to them about the rules that are in Leviticus. And most everybody has broken a lot of the rules in Leviticus, like wearing mixed material clothing, where it's talked about that in Leviticus. I was talking to somebody this morning about all of this with Leviticus and some of the other things. And they were, I know who it was. We were talking about Lori Alexander because she gave this long thing where she said that the words of Paul were the words of Jesus. And I had to say, you know, Paul may have been divinely inspired when he wrote what he wrote, but Paul did not write the words of Jesus. Only Jesus said the words of Jesus, and other people wrote them down. But Paul came along well after Jesus, and you have to look at his rules and the things he said against the culture of the time about the history of what he was doing. And you can't really make the observation that everything Paul said is 100% true. And that's the way with the Bible too, because there's so many weird translations. There's so many things that were put in and pulled out that I'm kind of like more the spirit of the Bible than the actual word of the Bible. And follow Jesus, and everything else, it doesn't really matter so much. I used to sing in an LGBTQ choir that used to rehearse at a Methodist church. So yeah, I can imagine them being pretty cool with gay people. They most definitely are. And you know, they say open hands. Started having some people who were talking some mad trash about the gay people, about liberals, about all kinds of stuff. And I was like, what are you doing here? You see that sign over there that says open hands, open hearts? So for me, landing in the Methodist church post Quiverful, in a church similar to to Hillsong was a really positive thing. They were involved at Hillsong with Mercy Ministries, and Mercy Ministries is extremely controversial. They're an evangelical charity that concentrates on the anti-abortion view, and they have awful theology about homosexuality. Mercy Ministries was shut down in 2009. And now Hillsong has distanced themselves from the organization, even though they were funding it and staffing it for a while there. So there's been a lot of people who leave Hillsong that have criticisms of it. There's a book out right now called An Insider Story of the Life in and Out of Hillsong by Tanya Levin. People in Glass Houses, an insider story. Resistance to free thought. She talks about strict fundamentalist teachings, lack of compassion, lack of all financial accountability, authoritarian church governance. That's the worst. And all these former members are trying to say the same thing, KJ, that it is a CULT. Mark Driscoll, and if you don't know who Driscoll is, Driscoll was a pastor of a church called Mars Hill in Seattle. Controversial, ended up, I'm roboting, oh gosh. Can you see me or hear me? If not, I will end it. So I'm waiting to see if anybody will see or hear me. Mark Driscoll had a church called Mars Hill, very controversial. Bought his way onto the New York Times bestseller list and called women penis garages. That's the short answer. My mom was directly involved with the whole Driscoll. Oh, no. I know somebody who was part of that too. There's somebody that come through here, and I don't even want to name them. They had schools, and they were part of Driscoll's circle and got burned big time when all that went down. And it's kind of funny because this person, her and her husband are really con artists. They go around and start these schools, make big claims about the schools, get a lot of money from people, and then it all goes down in flames. They started a school here in Tamarindo. The school never received proper accreditation, so any kid graduating from their school cannot take part in Costa Rican universities, and they aren't qualified to go to U.S. universities either because the school is not accredited. So all of these people are just such scam artists. It just blows my mind. And they're all kind of inner thing. Yeah, penis garage. Yeah. It is ridiculous, Lady Hawk. That was one of his big things that he said in his book about male-female marriage relationships. He called women penis homes at one point, and it was just unbelievable. When I heard that, it was like, no. And so when he went down in flames and Mars Hill closed, he popped up on Pathos as a writer. And those of us that were working for Pathos were like livid. It's like, I can't believe you let that guy. I can't believe you let that guy have a column. Bristol Palin have a column. It was like, is there any kind of anything moral going on here? Obviously not. Did you see the movie Meet the Millers? One of the strippers' nicknames was Boner Garage. Oh my gosh. That's funny. That's pretty hysterical. Okay, and Black Lives Matter and Hillsong have had some head knockings. And Hillsong said some ugly things. And lately they have had, Hillsong held a panel discussion. They had people of color with diverse backgrounds and members on there who involved with the church. And they they had their panel discussion, and it sounds like it was pretty decent. I talked about Carl Lynn's had affairs. He's the reason that Justin Bieber was involved with Hillsong. And Hillsong's view on marriage is close to what Assemblies of God, Pentecostalism, and everything else. The husband is the head of the family. The wife is to submit cheerfully. You know that nonsense. I didn't know this, but I'm reading this right now. The church breached a lot of COVID-19 rules. They had a video where they were filmed dancing and singing without masks at a youth camp. They just ignored all safety regulations to do that. The New South Wales police did not issue a fine over that, but it was kind of a scandal. It looks like that the leaders of the youth camp really got in some trouble for that. Hillsong Dallas pastor Reed Bogard having an affair. Sam Collier, lead pastor of Hillsong Atlanta. He resigned because of all the different scandals going on in the leadership. He was the first African-American pastor to lead Hillsong Church. Hillsong Phoenix, their church, left the Hillsong Global Network, citing the loss of confidence in Hillsong's global brand leadership in the wake of the resignation of founder Brian Houston. So there you get it. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My yarn fun. Thanks you, silly rabbit. Yeah, so joyfully available is something that they preach and teach. So I'm going to have to go listen to what Hillary Bieber said, because for a young woman to say she was struggling with her marriage at 7 months is not good. And so many of these churches have the most regressive attitudes towards women. Like I said, a lot of them actually promote a book that was written in the 1920s. It was called When Queens Ride By is the Way to Live. Fix yourself up every day, put on your lipstick, do your hair, dress for your husband, dress nice, be soft-spoken, gentle, and ladylike. You know, they tried to make me speak like this for my vocal cords when I was doing physical therapy, but I always had a problem with speaking lighter and speaking a lower tone. It's just not normal. But this is what churches want you to be if you're going to be a woman. You're also going to smile no matter what bad decision your husband makes. See, I can't talk for that long. If I start talking that way, it's just ridiculous. So I had to tell the physical therapist that I am never going to do that. Even if it is good for my vocal cords, it's not my natural speaking voice. So there you have it. Hillsong, standard evangelical church. They're just neoconservative and not entirely in charge of other churches that our friend dear Catherine is claiming. Sure enough, they are toxic. Like I said, there's a lot going on there, a lot. But they're hardly the only offender. I could probably name 30 churches right now, loosely affiliated with Hillsong, that hold just as views, if not worse. You remember I was talking about deliverance ministry that I received in Wilmington, North Carolina? That church, very problematic. So problematic, they've changed the name of the church 4 or 5 times. They've changed the name of their ministry, their deliverance ministry, because of lawsuits, is my understanding. If somebody tries to tell you that you need to have deliverance ministry, run. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. It's been a bad asthma day. I was out looking at furniture earlier today. We went to a Very nice furniture store here called Casa y Mas. It's a they have high-end stuff, real high-end stuff, imported from Europe usually. And I think we're going to go back and get some of the lamps and have somebody wire in some better lighting in the kitchen and some other stuff. I'm also getting my kitchen island soon, so I'm getting ready to do a minor remodel of the kitchen, and I'm going to post pictures when that happens. I was out and about doing that crap. These churches have got to have altos in church choirs. There's no way we can fake that voice. Low lady voices like mine could never do that for a long time. Lady Hawk, I used to be able to sing upper soprano ranges and soprano and alto, but now I'm stuck with alto. I'm stuck with it. I was listening to all of these wonderful Hillsong songs earlier and singing in my alto voice because I can't do soprano anymore. Send in the eunuchs. Yeah, the whole idea of the eunuchs with the beautiful soprano voices. Oh, wow. Some of the recordings I've heard, the early recordings of that are amazing. Amazing. It's amazing what we've come up with through churches and religion and things that have fallen out of favor. And I know that the whole idea of neutering boys so that they will keep their soprano voices is a ridiculous one. Everything is written for sopranos, everything. You're exactly right, Lady Hawk. A lot of times what I've had to do when I used to sing is listen to something so long that I can work out my own alto voice. If you can improvise like that, you're better off. Music seems to like the treble clef. It does. It does. It does. Oh, and I got to tell you guys, I'm really happy about one thing. My kids are coming. About 6 weeks from now, they're coming to see me here. Yay. And I'm like excited because I haven't seen them since summer. I miss my kids every single day. I miss them bad. Miss them bad, but they're coming, and I'm gearing up for that. I'm going to be redoing a few things here. I wish I could just go ahead and do my kitchen remodel before they get here, but we're only going to do the first part now. And I still have to put up with my refrigerator that I have used contact paper on the front of to avoid the rust for a little while until we figure it out. Roasted nice iguana. No. We're not doing any of that crap. That's for sure. I wouldn't eat the iguana at the time the guy brought us iguana soup. I wouldn't do it. I just couldn't because I enjoyed that iguana walking around. And the pool guys just took his head off and took him away for his iguana soup. Oh, okay. Love you guys. Have a great day. When you start transmuting your range, you wind up needing an entire staff below the existing staff. Yeah, that's the problem. It's a mess. See you later.